We kindle this symbol of our community of faith for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. Good morning, I'm LB, your Director of Music and Worship Arts. I use the pronouns he, him, and his. And it sounds like my microphone's a little bit hot, so let's bring it down some. If you need to have hearing assistance this morning, we do have some devices out just on the other side of the doors, and the ushers can help you with those. We begin this morning with our opening hymn, Where is Our Holy Church? We ask a question, we give a possible response. Please join together in singing number 113, Where is Our Holy Church?
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lansing. My name is Reverend Neal Anderson. I serve here as senior minister and use pronouns he, him, and his. Seems like I saw some of you yesterday at Yankee Springs. And now here we are at church this morning. Yankee Springs is a lovely recreation area where some UU congregants here are spending a lovely weekend. Some of us just for the day so that we could have taco lunch. I always have to really work at taco because where I grew up, we didn't call them that. We called them tacos. Right, Mom? She wouldn't mind me telling this story. We were at a restaurant in Nevada, and we were going to order some tacos, and she said, hey, can I have some tacos, please? And the server looked and said, what do you want? Tacos. I said, just try tacos, see what happens. Oh, tacos. Okay, yeah, we can get those. Plenty of tacos. Fantastic. Well, you know, here we gather as Unitarian Universalists to shape what is of worth to us as a religious community. And as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant together, congregation to congregation, and throughout our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on that foundation of love. For it is love that has the power to hold us together, and it is at the center of all our shared values. For we are accountable to one another for doing the work of living those shared values through the spiritual discipline of one. Inseparable from one another, those shared values that we practice are interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. So we can think about how we incarnate those values in the world as we gather here on this last Sunday of May and the Memorial Day long weekend. My son Bayard tells me there's no school tomorrow. So that's exciting news, right? Hopefully some of you have had a chance to be in your gardens. I hear that Memorial Day weekend can be a good time for planting those seeds that we may see come to fruition in the fall. It's good to have any of you who are here for the first time and visiting. Hopefully you've stopped by our membership table and talked to some folks there. Make sure you leave your email address because we can send you our weekly newsletter. It comes out on Friday. Tells you all about the various ministries that we have here. We may have some folks joining us this morning via our live stream. And so if you want to take a moment and just greet everybody who joins us via live stream, it's good to have you with us this morning. And now I'd invite you to do the same with those folks who join you this morning in the sanctuary. Let's take some time to greet one another. So far this morning, we have already been asked many questions in both of our hymns and even the title of worship. So the story could be no different. It's one of those stories that asks us, well, what would you do? So let's just use our imagination for a bit in this particular story. But first, I want to know, how many of you have ever been to a baseball game? Raise your hands if you've been to a baseball game. That is the vast majority of folks. I think maybe all of us have been to a baseball game. Now, how many of you have a baseball team that you would say, that's my team? You've got a team that's like, that's my team. Anybody? Okay. Now, is there anybody out there whose team is like a big cat, like maybe a tiger or something like that? Anybody have a tiger? Yeah, but there's a few. Okay. Well, lucky you, because they're only 1.5 games from first place in the major leagues this season. So it's probably a good season. I don't know what happened. I looked a week ago, and they were right at the top, and now the Phillies somehow have taken over. So maybe I got to pay closer attention, right? Like, how did that happen? Must have lost a few games. Anyways, given the situation of baseball, I do bring you bad tidings this morning regarding baseball. For I have received an advance copy of a statement that will be released tomorrow by Governor Whitmer. You see, I mean, it's hard to believe that this would be an edict from Governor Whitmer. I'm kind of worried she might have caught a virus the last visit to Washington, you know, in the Oval Office. The decree says, hear ye, all citizens of Michigan, effective immediately. You're hereby notified that baseball is now illegal within our borders. For today onward, it is absolutely forbidden to watch baseball, play baseball, and go to a baseball game. You can't even stand in your backyard with a ball and a bat. If you must, buy a frisbee or kick around a soccer ball. Don't ask why. You know, we have reasons and we mean it. No matter how old you are or which team you used to root for, you will be in huge trouble. You might even be incarcerated for a long time if you even try to watch baseball in the state of Michigan, starting today. So baseball is going to be illegal, but what are each of us going to do now? Let's pretend. What would you do if you could be incarcerated, if you could go to jail just for playing baseball or for watching it? What would you do? So one person said they would do it and they would go to jail. Anybody else? Yeah? Same? Okay, we got some, some resistors. Okay, civil disobedience. You're going to sit in at the baseball park with all, like, masses of people. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody just say, well, whatever, it's baseball. Who cares? Yeah? No? Okay.
Make sure I voted in the next election.
Use the power of the ballot to maybe change the deciders. Okay. Yeah. So all of those things are a possibility. All possible ways to respond. For some, the new law might not affect them, so they would just shrug it off. Maybe the threat of incarceration scares some folks enough to stop or just kind of sneak around. Maybe you'll leave Michigan every time you want to hit a few balls or watch the team play. This may sound funny, kind of an odd example to talk about, but there are places where doing simple everyday things are forbidden. And a lot of times those forbidden things have to do with speaking our minds and practicing our religious traditions. So again, imagine you woke up tomorrow and found out that it was against the law to be a Unitarian Universalist or talk about Unitarian Universalist values. That was a pickle that some of our religious ancestors did face. For nearly 500 years ago in Europe, people got tired of being told that there was only one way to practice religion. So they began to read the Bible themselves, and they thought about it, which meant that they started coming up with new religious understandings. A few of them were our religious ancestors. They were part of a movement called the Radical Reformation, and they talked about new religious beliefs that we today would call Unitarian. And these brave people began to practice being Unitarians, even though it was forbidden. And they could get in a lot of trouble, as some of them did. Some of them said, I'll stop. It's not that important. I'll go along with what we're supposed to believe. Some of them said, I'll be a Unitarian in secret with people I trust, and in public I'll pretend to go along with what I'm told. Some of them said, I'm out of here. And they left places it was most dangerous to be a Unitarian and tried to find countries where it was safer. And a few of them said, nope, I'm going to be a Unitarian anyway and talk about my beliefs even if it gets me into trouble, because I can't deny my conscience and my faith. The truth is, we needed all of those early Unitarians, like Michael Servetus, who died because of his courage and his faith, the ones who fled to other countries like Faustus Socinus, the ones who practiced and taught Unitarian beliefs in secret. And maybe we even needed the people who said, it's not that important, because they got to make a choice. So you'll be happy to know that it is safe to play and watch baseball in Michigan. Maybe even the Tigers will be playing this afternoon. But I won't be watching because the Oilers are playing this afternoon. But I hope you're also happy to be a Unitarian Universalist. Let's be grateful for the people throughout the past 500 years who made sure that we could inherit this faith and take care of it for the next generations to come.
Our call to worship this morning was written by Reverend Michelle Collins. Here we are together, bearers of imagination, creators of new worlds. It is our imagination that lifts us beyond despair, that whispers, what if, and dares us to answer. Today we gather to renew that spark, to embrace the power to dream. Come, and let us imagine boldly and worship together.
As it is our tradition on the last Sunday of each month, we just take a moment to recognize those of us who come together this morning with broken hearts for losses that we may have experienced in our lives over the last months or years that give us a heavy heart. For grief is always a part of life, for we face losses on a regular basis. So for those of you who are feeling loss in this moment, for all of those in the world who are experiencing the brokenheartedness at the loss of a loved one, we take some time together in silence. this morning in my welcome, I mentioned how we are called as Unitarian Universalists to support each other's ministries across congregations. It reminded me of a story of a congregant here who had a family member stranded in a town in the middle of Illinois, needed some assistance to get out of town, so to speak, and get on the road further on in their travels. And I got a phone call, and they said, hey, do you know anybody in this town? And the only thing I could think of is, maybe I know the minister. So I called another minister who I knew, who I thought might know that minister, and after a little bit of a text chain, I got the minister's number, and I texted, could you help out? I have a congregant who has a family member, they're in town, they need help. I got a text back immediately, said, no problem, I just have a memorial service due to 11, and next thing you know, they're there to help. I need to leave a little earlier than I usually do today because I'm going to do a memorial service in Jackson. And this is because a Unitarian Universalist in New York who has family member in Jackson said, oh, I need a UU minister to help us out, and called me. So all of the time, this wonderful web of existence of which we are a part as Unitarian Universalists gets activated, which I think is such a blessing. As we gather this morning, I'm inviting you now to participate, if you like, in a ritual that we call Touchstones. You may wish to come forward. LB and I will be here with some touchstones. And if you have joys and sorrows or something that you just have on your heart that you want to recognize in your mind's eye this morning, you can take a touchstone or more and deposit them in the columns of water that are on either side of the sanctuary. I'd invite all of us to witness to each other in community as we engage in this ritual together. LB will drop a few more stones for all of you who gather via live stream and wish to participate in this ritual, and to all of those touchstones that remain in our hearts and on our minds. In honor of Memorial Day, I share a reflection by Reverend George Teager, who serves as a Unitarian Universalist chaplain in the United States Army. George wrote this reflection on Memorial Day 3 years ago. He begins with a quote from Archibald MacLeish, who writes, "The young dead soldiers do not speak. They have a silence that speaks for them at night, and when the clock counts, they say, 'We were young, we have died, remember us.'" George writes, "I met Scott's father a year after he was killed. It was a pilgrimage for me. I drove 1,000 miles every moment wondering if he'd see me as a symbol of a system that had taken his son. When he and his wife met me in their front yard, Mike and I hugged tightly for too short an eternity. As an Army chaplain and therapist, I understand the spiritual, psychological, and physiological foundations of trauma. I can talk for hours about how the body keeps the score, about the vagus nerve response, about flight, fight, and freeze mechanism. I can reflect with you about the spiritual meaning of loss, grief, and suffering, how they fit in your life, and how they can burden the soul if held too tightly. I understand all of this, yet not a day goes by when something doesn't bring to mind a young life now gone. Ghosts of what might have been are my everyday companions. I will let them go, for I fear if I do that I will forget. I'm greeted when least expected with waves of unbridled grief, a tightness in the throat, vision blurred a bit by welling tears, a little tremor in my hands, all things that remind me that I cannot, I will not forget. How many children lost, how many parents grieve. These memories, these ghosts are necessary reminders of the futility of war and the desperate need for peace in our world. The memories which come up upon me, not as thoughts, but as boldly, as bodily sensations, have deepened my compassion and instilled commitment to bringing peace to this suffering world. He continues, I serve in the U.S. Army. I support the readiness of those who have and will fight and win the wars our civilian leaders call us to fight. I love the people I am called to serve, knowing full well the dreadful reality we will one day face again. How then can I speak of peace? This is the difficulty of a holiday like Memorial Day. Memorial Day is not to be celebrated. It is to be observed, scrutinized, and witnessed on behalf of the true witnesses of our human failure to love our neighbor as ourselves. They are ghosts now, haunting lives with the gift of remembrance, so that we will not forget their living, but even more, that the grief of remembering will create in us a yearning for peace that will stir us to action.
In a spirit of meditation and prayer, let's join together in singing number 4 in the Gray Hymnals, I Brought My Spirit to the Sea. I brought my spirit to the sea. I stood upon the shore. I gazed upon then there came a sense of peace. Some whisper calmed my soul. Some ancient ministry of stars had made my spirit whole.
Living Spirit of love, give us compassion steeled with commitment, that we might become your peace, given in loving sacrifice to our troubled world.
I brought my spirit to the trees that loomed against the sky. I touched each wandering, careless breeze to know if God was nigh. And then I felt an inner flame that fiercely burned my tears. Upright I rose from bended knee to meet the asking years. It is our practice to give generously of our time, talents, and treasure to this church, and to share those gifts with our community partners. Our special plate collection for the month of May is Nation Outside. Nation Outside is led by people directly impacted by incarceration who are now creating pathways for others. It is Michigan's first trauma-informed, peer-led re-entry model. If you'd like to make a contribution, you can put cash and checks in the baskets as they go by, or you can do so online at uulansing.org. If you want to make sure that it gets to our partner, please put a notation for Nation Outside or special plate. If it's coming to the church, please note that it is a church pledge or a donation to the church itself. You can do this online at uulansing.org through the baskets that are coming around or by using the QR code that's currently on the screen. We will now gratefully receive the morning's offering.
Curious if anybody else in their moments of daydreaming has asked themselves the question, what if? What if I would have accepted that proposal? What if I would have refused that proposal? What if I would have chosen to go on that vacation? What if I didn't choose to go? So many what if questions. I mean, we could ask about each decision that we made throughout life. Movies are made about what if. You know, what if this decision happened and not that one? What was that? Some of those like Back to the Future, where you go back and you tinker with the past and the entire future changes. Well, we can do those interesting mind games with our imagination, with a simple question, what if? A number of years ago, there was an author named Randall Munroe. He published a book called What If? Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions. I remember seeing this popular book on the stacks in the bookstore. I didn't look at it very carefully because I thought that the image on the front cover of the book was a orca whale, but as I prepared for this sermon, I looked at it closely, and it was a Tyrannosaurus Rex being carried by a helicopter, almost being dropped into a hole. So that was good to know, that my imagination had created something completely different on a cover of a book. But I digress, and let me come back to some of the questions that Randall Munroe attempted to answer in this book. What if? What if you tried to hit a baseball pitched at 90% the speed of light? How fast can you hit a speed bump while driving and still live? If there was a robot apocalypse, how long would humanity last? What if everyone only had one soulmate? What if the moon just went away? Oh, I love this one, because I've been on elevators where this has happened. What would happen if everyone on Earth stood as close to each other as we could and jumped all at once, and everyone landed at the same time at the same instant? What if? Oh, would it be possible to get your teeth to such a cold temperature that they would shatter upon drinking a hot glass of coffee? Oh, is it possible to cry so much that you dehydrate yourself? Well, let's just take one example, because it would be fun, right? Like one example. And since we're with the baseball theme today, I figured, like, what would happen if you tried to hit a baseball pitched at 90% the speed of light? Like, not the speed of light, but just a little under the speed of light. Well, you know, Randall Munroe concludes that a lot of things would happen. And because it's like almost the speed of light, they're going to happen very, very quickly. So, sitting down with some physics books and some videotapes about nuclear tests, he tried to sort it out. And this is the best guess, nanosecond by nanosecond. So the ball would be going so fast that everything else would be practically stationary. Even the molecules in the air would just stand still. They would vibrate, those air molecules, back and forth at a few hundred miles per hour. But the ball itself would be moving 600 million miles per hour. Okay, so that's relatively fast, right? And it means that as far as the ball is concerned, it would just be hanging there, frozen. You know, the idea of aerodynamics, not happening here. There is no knuckleball, there is no curveball in this scenario. The air would flow around, normally the air would flow around something moving, but the air molecules in front of this ball wouldn't have any time to be jostled out of the way. And so therefore, the ball would smack into them so hard that the atoms in the air molecules would actually fuse with the atoms in the ball's surface. And each collision would release a burst of gamma rays and scattered particles. I hope you see where this might be going. So these gamma rays and debris would expand outward in a bubble centered on the pitcher's mound. And they would start to tear apart the molecules in the air, ripping the electrons from the nuclei and turning the air in the stadium into an expanding bubble of incandescent plasma. And the wall of the bubble would approach the batter at about the speed of light, only slightly ahead of the ball itself. And the constant fusion in front of the ball would push back on it, slowing it down as if the ball were a rocket flying tail first while firing its engines. Unfortunately, the ball would be going so fast that even the tremendous force from the ongoing thermonuclear explosion would barely slow it down. And it would start to eat up the surface of the ball. And so by the time the ball got to home plate, the ball wouldn't be there. But that's not half the problem, because as that expanding plasma, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen ramming into the air and triggering the fusion, it would continue. And when it did reach home plate nanoseconds later, the center of the cloud would still be moving at an appreciable fraction of the speed of light. It would hit the bat first, but then the batter, then the plate, then the catcher, and they'd all be scooped up, carried back through the backstop, and disintegrate. So the shell of the X-rays and the superheated plasma would expand outward and upward, swallowing the backstop, both teams, the stands, surrounding neighborhood. Problematic here. And this is just in the first microsecond. Like, that's it. Now, if you were watching from like the hilltop somewhere in the city, well, you would first see a blinding light, far outshining the sun, and that would fade over a few seconds, and it would grow into a fireball. And it would roar past you and, tear up the trees and shred the houses, and everything within a mile of the ballpark would be leveled, and a firestorm would engulf the surrounding city. And the baseball diamond, it would be a crater, but a few hundred feet back from where it used to be. Now, the important thing to realize in this whole story is that those of you who watch Major League Baseball know that Rule 6.08 B suggests that in this situation, the batter would be considered hit by the pitch and therefore would be eligible to take first base. It's so fun to tell these scenarios of what if. And what if thinking is not only fun, but I think it allows us to exercise our imagination. And for the purpose of this sermon, to exercise what some call our moral imaginations. Some years ago, while driving children here or there, I would turn on a radio station called Kids Place Live. And often on their shows, they would play a game that was called Would You Rather? Anybody play the game, Would You Rather? Some folks know the game. Excellent. So it is simply a game where you ask a question. Would you rather do this or that? Would you rather this happened or that happened? And so I was remembering the boys and I listening to some of these programs. And one of the Would You Rather questions was, would you rather have a belly button that randomly shoots out chocolate chip cookies, or have the ability to toot rainbows? Hours of fun and frivolity and imagination can come from, do you want the chocolate chip cookies or do you want the rainbows, right? And then you can actually turn some of those would you rather questions into opportunities for using moral imagination. Would you rather be on a losing team with friends or join your rival team and win the competition? Would you rather travel back in time to meet your ancestors or forward in time to meet your descendants? Oh, and here's one for me in my life. Would I rather lose all my teeth or all my hair? So John Paul Lederach wrote a book called The Moral Imagination, The Art and Soul of Building Peace. And Lederach describes the moral imagination as the capacity to recognize turning points and possibilities in order to venture down unknown paths and create what does not yet exist. And so in reference to peace building, the moral imagination is the capacity to imagine and generate constructive processes that are rooted in the day-to-day challenges of violence and yet transcend those destructive patterns. Philosopher Mark Johnson says about moral imagination that it means envisioning the full range of possibilities in a particular situation in order to solve an ethical challenge. Johnson emphasizes that acting morally often requires more than just strength of character. For example, moral action requires empathy and the awareness to discern what is morally relevant in a given situation. Others define moral imagination as the ability to be simultaneously ethical and successful by envisioning new and creative alternatives. Three principles that we could use in unlocking our moral imaginations, in practicing and exercising those imaginations are these. The first principle would be to co-create with empathy. So as a first step to building our moral imaginations, it would be essential to set intention to co-design alongside and with the involvement of affected communities. This principle is well established in disability justice spaces, utilizing the phrase, "nothing about us without us." That we should invite and co-create with respect and empathy for those who are deeply rooted in the space and have lived experience. So for example, if we deeply desire greater diversity in our congregational life, it's not enough just to talk about and speculate on what people may seek out of a religious community. We must ask and listen and listen and listen. If we want younger people to join a ministry, don't make assumptions for them. Ask them. Nothing about us without us. The second principle would be to break the binary. So, reject these polarities that have taken root in society. We don't have to be adherents of dichotomies. And in order to reject those binaries, we need to be comfortable with our own uncomfortableness and challenge our preconceived notions. Imagination can find a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, etc. way. I have come to replace that dichotomy of either or with both and thinking. And finally, turning conflict into creativity, approaching the challenges of conflict with compassion, curiosity, and commitment to stay at the metaphorical table, and maybe even sometimes have a bit of fun. Conflict can be a source of dissatisfaction with the status quo, and it can provide motivation to acknowledge and address problems. It is the case thought that situations of conflict are unlikely to lead to creative change if they are threatening or tense. So when our conflict is engulfed with threat and tension, it's really hard to use our moral imaginations. So to entertain novel ideas that may at first seem wild and implausible, people need the freedom or courage to express themselves without fear of censure. So creativity requires adopting a novel point of view that stimulates new questions. Some conflict theorists would tell us, for example, Stress adopting a point of view that sees conflict as mutual problems of the conflicting parties. Not a problem for one or the other, but a mutual problem. Reframing conflict in this way is both an exercise in creativity and tends to promote further creativity by fostering a less threatening collaborative resolution process. Co-create with empathy. Break the binary. Turn conflict into creativity. In the closing of his book on the moral imagination, Lederach suggests ways to develop and exercise the moral imagination. He imagines a world where all leaders at all levels are required to attend continuing education at the School for Moral Imagination. Yes, he proposes starting with just 1 week, just a week, knowing that there would be a lot of resistance to attending the School for Moral Imagination. But the classrooms would be mixed up to include people who rarely talk to each other in real life. There would, of course, be lots of tea and coffee, a necessity, but very few lecturers. Participants would be required simply to talk openly and honestly with each other about their hopes and fears. Every day they would hear a presentation from someone who had overcome huge challenges: refugees, survivors of abuse, or folks who lived with oppression at every step of their lives. And of course, at least part of each day, the participants would do art, listen to music, write, or pursue other creative endeavors. And at the end of the week, they would all go out and plant a garden together. And on the door, at the exit, the School for Moral Imagination, there would be a plaque that each of those students would read at the end of every day. And that plaque would say, "Reach out to those you fear. Touch the heart of complexity. Imagine beyond what is seen. Risk vulnerability one step at a time." May it be so, and blessed be.
As Reverend Neal mentioned, we've asked a lot of questions today, which, as you use, we probably should continue doing. Eventually, that leads us to the point where we decide to take what was mentioned as moral action. And our closing hymn today is a suggestion for how to approach leading moral action. We talk about leading with love, and in the sermon we heard about respect and empathy, which to me is just a different way of saying love. So please join together in whatever way you're comfortable. With one foot, lead with love. This is a call and response piece. So I'll sing, and then I will invite you to sing. You only have to remember about 2 seconds at a time. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with, join me. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love.
let us say together our benediction. As a religious community, inspired by awe and wonder, we nurture spiritual growth, connect in authentic, loving relationships, and engage in courageous work for peace and justice. May we lead with love. Our worship is over. May our service begin.